Hi students, welcome to Science with Nuz. In today's lesson, we'll be discussing the characteristics of living organisms. First of all, what are living organisms? Are animals, plants, bacteria, fungi and viruses all living organisms? Well, actually, animals, plants, bacteria, and fungi are living organisms. However, viruses are not considered to be living organisms. So, what is it that classifies these living organisms and differentiates it from non living things? What makes animals, plants, bacteria, and fungi living, and what makes virus non living? That is what today's lesson is going to be about. So, there are basically 8 characteristics of living organisms. These are movement, respiration, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, nutrition, and control. We can remember this using the acronym Mrs. Gren C, where each of them is the starting letter to a new life process. I'm sure you may have heard of the acronym Mrs. Gren, but now since we are in our IGCSEs, we are learning another important life process, which is control, which starts with C. So we will be going over what each of these are, what they mean, their definitions, and some examples. The first characteristic is movement. Movement is basically the action of an organism that causes a change of position or place. For instance, we know that humans can move from one place to another. This is an example for change in place. Whereas plants, we know that they move towards the sunlight because they want the sun in order to photosynthesize. So plants would bend their leaves towards the sunlight in order to get more sunlight. This is an example of change of position. So this basically summarizes movement. It is a change of position or a change of place. The change of place is actually called locomotion. So when an animal moves from one place to another, why I say animal is because plants do not really involve in locomotion. You don't really see a plant lifting its roots up and running and landing somewhere else, right? So it's mainly animals that involve in locomotion. So locomotion is the movement of an organism from one place to another. The next characteristic is respiration. Now, there's a common misconception that respiration is basically breathing, but it's not, right? Respiration is a chemical reaction that takes place in cells that involves in releasing energy from glucose. So, whatever food that we eat, or in the case of plants, they make their own food, the end product would be glucose, which is the main respiratory substrate. And this glucose is broken down in the presence of oxygen and also in the absence of oxygen, right? So it's broken down to release energy, which is used for, well, anything you like, whether it's to talk, to move your muscles, dance, sleep, even sleep. You technically need energy to sleep, right? So everything requires energy. So this energy comes from respiration. Anaerobic respiration is when it occurs without oxygen, but we are going to kind of keep that aside for now. And aerobic respiration is respiration in the presence of oxygen. There is an equation here for aerobic respiration that you are expected to remember, which is C6H12O6, which is glucose, plus oxygen gives energy, the main product. Energy is actually given in the form of ATP, so let me write that in brackets as well. And carbon dioxide and water, which are the waste products. Right. So remember that the main thing here is energy. The whole point of respiration is to produce this energy. The next characteristic is sensitivity. Sensitivity is basically the ability to detect and respond to stimuli, which is changes in the environment. This could be internal or external environment, where internal environment is basically discussed under control. So we will do that in the end, right? So some examples of sensitivity is when, let's say, your mom calls out your name and you hear it and you respond to it by turning your head back, right? So it could also be when you see a ball coming at your face being thrown by someone, right? And you dodge your face away. So that's a change in the environment, a ball which is coming towards you, and your response to it is to dodge your face away, right? So that is what sensitivity is all about. Non-living things can't do this, right? For example, if a ball comes at a window, it's not gonna, move its window away or glass away, right? So living organisms are able to detect these changes and respond to them. The next characteristic is growth. Growth is defined as a permanent increase in size or dry mass, right? So this could be by an increase in cell number or cell size or both. Multicellular organisms, which are organisms that have many cells, basically increase the number of cells in their bodies. They become more complicated and they change their shapes in certain ways as well. So that is basically an example of growth. Whereas unicellular organisms, which are single celled organisms, they show growth by a change in the size. So remember, growth is a permanent increase. You can't reverse it, right? It's permanent. It's a permanent increase in size and dry mass by either an increase in the cell size or an increase in the cell number or both. This could basically be a small plant that grows up to be a tree, right? So this is what growth is basically all about. The next characteristic is reproduction. Reproduction is basically the process that makes more of the same kind of organisms, which means that humans are going to make more humans and dogs are going to make more dogs. Single-celled organisms such as bacteria can simply involve in reproduction by dividing into two. This is how that would occur, where it just splits into two cells. So one is the parent cell and the other is the daughter cell. Whereas multicellular organisms such as plants and animals may reproduce either asexually or sexually. Asexually is when it's only one parent that involves in reproduction, and sexually is when there's two. Reproduction is actually extremely important to the survival of a species and the population. Can you imagine if maybe 2 or 3 generations ago, if the entire human race stopped reproducing, by now there would be no more humans left on earth, right? So it is vital for the survival of a species or the population. The next characteristic is excretion. Excretion refers to the removal of metabolic waste, which is the waste products of metabolic reactions which take place within the body. If allowed to accumulate within the body, it could become toxic to the organism. Therefore, it is removed from the body before that happens. An example is respiration over here, where carbon dioxide and water are metabolic waste. So, carbon dioxide, if allowed to accumulate within the body, it could be toxic and harm a human, right? So, what happens is this carbon dioxide is removed from the body, and that is what excretion is all about. So, excretory materials in animals include carbon dioxide from respiration, water from respiration, urea from the breakdown of proteins, and things like that. Whereas excretion in plants include oxygen, which is a waste product of photosynthesis, and carbon dioxide, which is a waste product of respiration, and also water, which is a waste product of respiration, and many more. We will be, talking about excretion in detail under the excretion unit, right? But for now, what we are expected to know is that excretion is the removal of metabolic waste from the body. The next characteristic is nutrition. Nutrition is the taking in of materials for energy, growth, and development. Plants, for instance, they make their own food, so they need light, carbon dioxide, and water to make their own food. So that is their form of nutrition. Whereas animals, we do not make our own food, we rely on plants for food. So we take in organic compounds by eating. And these organic compounds are then used in respiration, which we already discussed, where glucose is basically the end product of nutrition, and that reacts with oxygen in order to form energy. So nutrition and respiration go hand in hand, right? But we need to study what it is separately. So nutrition is the taking in of materials for energy, growth, and development. So here we have a plant which basically make its own food, but in order to do this it needs some materials, and it gets sunlight from the sun, and it gets water from the soil, and also carbon dioxide from the air. The last but definitely not the least characteristic of living organisms is control. So, control refers to living organisms maintaining their internal environment within certain limits. So, for instance, the optimum human body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. So, if the body temperature rises above this, the body works to bring this down, And if the body temperature goes below this, the body works to bring it back up, right? So like temperature, the blood glucose level is also something that is regulated. The pH levels, these are all, different examples of internal conditions that need to be kept, within a required optimum limit. So it's not only in animals that homeostasis occurs, it also occurs in plants. So we will be getting into these, like I said, later, right? Not just control and excretion, respiration, nutrition, these are all going to be elaborated in future topics. So let's first write what control is, and thereafter let's wrap up this video. So these are the 8 characteristics of living organisms. This is the very first lesson in Biology IGCSEs. So it's basically an introduction to kind of introduce you to biology, what you will be learning in the future, sort of, right? So it's a very summarized version of it. These points that I've written, they are to help you remember what each of them are. When you're defining it, it has to be in complete sentences, right? So I will include the definitions of each of these as well. So that's it for today. I hope you understood this lesson. I will see you in the next video.